So I just got out of finally seeing Get Out.
Oh, I get it. I get jokes.
Okay, that's not even true anymore. I saw it like a few weeks ago, but I just wanted to get that stupid pun out of the way. Anyway, man, do I have to say that it was one hell of a movie. And there are a few things that keep running over in my head. All these little moments that all add up and make for a really tight film that really makes sense when you start putting the pieces together. But really what I've been thinking about since seeing the movie is that it held this certain ability that I don't think most do. This film had something to it that I just don't get from others. This film made me feel unsafe while watching. It's rare that I'm ever as concerned for a character's well-being as I was while watching Get Out. And it's because it's tough, it's personal, it's manipulative and traumatic, and ultimately, it's a constant and irreversible threat. Once the ball gets rolling throughout the film and things really start to go bad, there is no going back. There aren't any breaks in the tension, there isn't a safety net, and there's no easy answer or way to get out. Whereas in most thriller/horror movies, whatever you want to call this one, if a character is in somewhat of a similar situation, the protagonist will often run outside and catch their breath for a sec. We get a break. And though the fight may not yet be over, there are at least halts in the action. Get Out doesn't provide its protagonist or audience with such luxury. Get Out is confrontational and intimidating. And really one of the reasons that I'd consider the film to be so intense and sort of even at times frightening is the very premise alone. And what this suggests regarding our protagonist Chris's personal relationship with Rose, his girlfriend. So late in the film, it's revealed that Rose has been playing him all along and has really just acted as bait to lure him into this devastating plan of operation. An operation which involves the taking of other people's bodies, specifically African American people's bodies, and basically surgically possessing them to obtain what this family believes to be their naturally superior genetic gifts, which they also believe to be wasted potential on the original owner's part. What? That's what this movie is about? Jeez. And it turns out Chris isn't the first of which Rose has done this to either. Late in the film, Chris discovers a series of photographs which display Rose with multiple different men and women whom are all past and even current victims in these severely messed up plans. Which brings me to my list. Here I'll be discussing the 6 main primal fears that Get Out uses effectively. Rose represents one of the primal fears that I believe plays a big part in the film, the fear of betrayal. The film initially introduces us to this couple as legitimate lovers who are even actually pretty damn likable, and that's what makes the final reveal that much more hurtful, even to somebody who's just observing. It's funny though, because in a way it's kind of obvious that this is of course where it was going to end up. If you knew the basic plot before having seen the film, then you know that this is about Chris meeting Rose's family, and so obviously she must know who her family really is, and must obviously be purposefully putting Chris in the situation. But despite that, you still buy in. Despite that, I still wanted to believe in her and in them. And so from the get-go, I sat there in like this hesitant suspicion, but ultimately unfortunate trust. From the moment Chris realizes that there is something seriously wrong, the film only intensifies that much more. The scene directly after the reveal is so perfectly nuanced in terms of characterization and actions that it honestly almost feels kind of real, as he hesitantly tries to remain calm and collected, but vaguely giving himself away. And it's this calm before the storm that really gets to me, the moment where I'm not sure if she knows that he knows just yet, but I know that something is on the brink of occurring, something is about to blow up. But the thing about such a scene is that it's not only scary because we think he is potentially going to get his life taken from him one way or another, it's also emotionally scary. One of the few people that we see Chris trust and love is the very person who crosses him in the end, and it's hard to watch. All hope feels lost in this moment, and Chris and thus the audience now feel so much more alone in an already dire situation. Another major fear that is explored throughout Get Out is this idea of not fitting in and being left out, yet also being the center of attention. This film heavily uses racism to explore this idea. It's an interesting and clever way to portray it. Throughout the film, Chris goes through tiny moments of conflict from character to character. Little phrases that go by presumably with no offense being intentionally inflicted. Little awkward conversations that don't feel quite respectful. It's all these nuanced little things that we as an audience collectively put together and know something is not quite right. And right from the get-go, we see Chris experience these sorts of moments of not fitting in and being picked on for being different. We also see that he is unfortunately used to this kind of thing, as early in the film we see as a police officer asked to see his license and registration following a minor car accident in which he was not the one driving. And we see it from the straight up obvious contrast between the family and Chris in general. He is literally surrounded by those who are different. And I'm not even just talking about skin color. This group of people are constantly proven to be almost from a different world. In this way, the protagonist is clearly set upon a feeling of being outnumbered. And when this becomes a literal fight for his life, that fact becomes all that much more frightening. Another fear that I feel Chris experiences in the film is the fear of this unfolding mystery itself. Why the hell are these people acting so weird? Why do the other black people on the property basically act inhuman? And what the hell exactly is this family playing at?
What are you playing at?
And this is really best represented in quite a few scenes, to be honest, but specifically I wanted to talk about the scene where Chris speaks to the female servant, butler, whatever you want to call her, as she physically struggles to fight internally while on the brink of trying to keep up the charade of smiling and being polite, but while also being on the verge of tears. This becomes more obvious why she acts this way later, but during the scene, upon a first viewing, it is honestly just a little bit confusing. But even more so than that, it's just creepy as hell. One of the most glaringly obvious themes throughout this film is, of course, its relationship to racism and the grand point that it intends to make via this fun little thriller story. And I feel that this is important to talk about. After all, this is probably the cause for the film's fortunate but surprising amount of success. Symbolically, of course, the entire idea of the film, in which a black man is ultimately being held against his will for insidious reasons, blends into the general idea of black men being held against their will in society. But in the movie, there's something more to it than that, or in a way, more importantly to me, less to it. Really, what fear is primarily being used throughout the film is different forms of claustrophobia. Chris is stuck in a bad situation, secluded from any help and trapped in the seemingly perfect community of a family. Chris is also literally stuck in this house with no likely escape. Chris is mentally stuck in the deep regret for what happened to him and his mother as a child, and he's ultimately stuck in this racially targeted attack. Well, this is it, the big one, the granddaddy of them all, the one fear that this film is really all about, the fear of not having control. Throughout the film, Chris is often taken down by hypnotism that the mother of the family, Missy, inflicts on him involuntarily on his part, of course. She sets him up to be mentally stuck in a place in which she calls the sunken place, which in itself is a tremendously horrifying idea to me. When he is mentally stuck in this state, Chris is totally unable to move, but can still feel and see everything before him. And this idea of not being in control of one's body something that personally just really gets to me. And I feel like others would probably have this kind of fear too. But just for a sec, I'm going to get a little personal, I guess. I kind of suffer from, I don't know what the technical term for it would be. I experience what I believe to be some variation of sleep paralysis, in which I temporarily feel stuck in the certain consciousness between being awake and being asleep. I'm aware when I'm in this situation, but I can't do anything about it. I try to shake myself out of it, I try to wake myself up, but it often proves to be useless, at least for a little while. And boy, it's some scary and uncomfortable stuff. Well, Get Out provides a much stronger version of this, as Chris is constantly paralyzed throughout the film. And when he is in such a situation, it renders him completely and utterly vulnerable. He can't control what happens to his body. He can't control what happens to those around him. He can't control his actions, his situation, or anything. All he can do is sit back and watch helplessly. And if that doesn't sound like the thing of nightmares, well then I guess you're either real brave or real dumb. So yeah, that does it. Those are just some of the things that I've been thinking about since having seen Get Out. I really enjoyed it, and I was glad that it finally came out in Australia, since I know that it's been out for months in America. And if you haven't seen it, I'd definitely say it's worth a watch.